thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching the program. And Mr. Greg Gill is joining us right now. And we're going to let you take over, Paul, for the next 25 minutes or so when Greg starts his camera.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Greg Gill.
So I'm not sure who's this fellow from Racer Magazine.
I
this
don't
is
know.
the first time I've met him.
Was with Racer Magazine.
I've heard amazing things about him, but he doesn't look like the Lawrence Foster fellow I saw earlier today. So.
Well, it's nice to be talking to a former publisher of Racer here.
I hope that the industry can forgive me for my brief tenure.
Well, they owe you a debt of gratitude because it was still here for us to take forward. So thank you, Greg. It's great to see you.
Good to see you, my friend. How are you doing?
Well, I get two fanboy moments in a row. As you know, I'm a Trans Am fan, and I'm a big fan of what you do too. And what your team has done, Greg.
It's great. It was great to be back to back with Claggett and Trans Am, and today has just been great for motorsports from Wilson and Mark, and just the different things today. And obviously, even I hadn't had the time to watch WEC, and it is exciting to see what you've done with Racer promoting this, and really to be part of Industry Week. And I believe this is the third year. Is that correct?
It's the third year, and
amazing to see.
What's terrific about it, Greg, is that there's it was born out of the pandemic, and we both had to deal with figuring out how do you go forward in the middle of this, and what I think we're seeing and you're seeing too, and I want to talk about this a little bit, is, your series is, accelerated hard coming out of this pandemic. I saw this when I went to your victory banquet last year, just kind of the cultural energy and what had happened. It was vibrant and full of purpose, and it just looked fantastic in the way you present yourselves. This year, great stuff again happening. I want to talk to you about how you're managing what has been constant evolution into this entity that's the extension of a global entity in the sports car world. SRO is a big deal around the world, and with the World Challenge that once sat inside the same house as Trans Am did, this has evolved from that. A lot of our audience may not understand what's happened here and your role in it, and what this transformation has been. Would you spend a few minutes just talking about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great point, Paul, because if you say SRO represents the best GT racing on the planet, people okay, they might accept that might be a statement, and it's been given to us by others. But then you would look at it historically and say, well, wait a minute, World Challenge, didn't you guys start really in the touring car space? And I remember Speed World Challenge and all of that. So it creates a little confusion for people in that sense. And so we're thankful for that. This was my 10th year with the company, 33 years now as World Challenge. We're really excited about that. But in that evolution of what was something that existed as Speed World Challenge and something done, and built under the SCCA, and then thankfully, as you and I have talked about before, a group of racers, supporting the SCCA, saying, we'll help market it, we'll help build something, and that was in 2008, the evolution of the organization with the vision of Peter Cunningham, Bob Woodhouse, Jim Huey, Charles Morgan, and others that had the courage and vision to as racers, it's often said in a lot of different disciplines, racing by racers, and that's definitely what World Challenge's history is. And so here in the States, we're excited to be part of a global organization and have such iconic races as the 24 Hours of Spa and 12 Hours of Bathurst, 10 Hours of Suzuka, et cetera. And now, Kyalami as well. But in the US, it's GT racing and touring car racing. And that is what we work on and we continue to build on. And that's the core of who we are.
Yes. And it's pretty slick now, I got to say. I was around during the humble beginnings of what was World Challenge. I did get to see that 2000s evolution of World Challenge. I very much liked what it was doing. I thought that was, a fun time. But what we have now is something that's really has the polish and fit of a truly, it feels like part of a global thing now. And the what does that mean in your view of who you are and what you represent in this market? You started as an organic homegrown product, but now you're the piece, a very important piece in a global puzzle. What responsibility do you have to the American marketplace and to the greater whole of SRO and what you do?
Stefan Rattel shared it with our vice president of operations and I on breakfast right after our big exciting 2019 gala there with 1,000 of our closest friends in Las Vegas. Brian, he and I went to a typical Las Vegas diner and grabbed some breakfast at 7 a.m. after a gala. I still haven't quite understood the wisdom of starting that early. But it was, he just looked at us and he said, guys, think globally, act locally. He goes, I want an American accent here. Stefan is very proud of his French heritage, global citizen, lives in Rome currently, lived in and worked in London, where we still have offices for 18 years. And yet, in one of his proudest moments is always to point out to people that he went to San Diego State, and he appreciates it. And he recognized when he went to San Diego State in the late 80s that it was really a changing time, and America was unique in motorsports. And he went to NASCAR races and he saw the difference, and he went to the iconic places like Daytona and Indy, and he knew that there was the difference. So he gives us a great freedom to represent North American motorsports and be part of that and fit in that economy and culture here. And at the same time, recognize that when we work with our global sponsors, we're, among Pirelli, among others, that we can really talk about a full global fit and opportunity and allow manufacturers and drivers to compete for something globally and a true world championship. So that's really the fun aspect of it, is that, we just got back from a trip to London for seeing our kind of global prize giving in London and meeting some manufacturers as well, along with our team going over. And, at the end of the day, we're just part of something that is very special, racing on 5 continents.
Yes, and it also you're racing some of the most beautiful racing cars on the face of the planet. These are the aspirational, iconic cars that people dream of driving, let alone racing. And
like the Mini Cooper.
Yeah, well, that's me. But there are others that have different dreams. And there's I think an event that is a global event in Indianapolis, which is, you want to talk about how that came to be and how that's worked for you?
I think growing up, if you have any sort of motorsports interest, the Indy 500. And you and I are both from Southern California, and I can always appreciate early watching on television. And we've talked about that experience for both of us. And so to get the opportunity to go to Indy, you already know you're in a special place. And over a few years, we were able to work with first Doug Bowles, president of the place, and then as Penske completed their purchase, continue to evolve with the Penske organization there. What was neat, and I think, we hear this with all of the speakers today, and everyone in motorsports recognizes that you have to constantly evolve. And I'm so fortunate to work with such a great team of people who are always thinking about that. And Stefan really frees us up to think innovatively. And I can't tell you which one of our team members, I'm going to attribute it to Stacy or Rob, but I can't be sure which one of them said, hey, what if we did this into the dark? Nobody's ever done that at Indy. Let's finish under the lights. And again, kudos to Indy, which is certainly proud of their sacred heritage, is that they were willing to do that. And I think we actually were paving the way for IMSA to do the same thing. And, we were proud of that. So it was really neat to finish that. And the fans loved it. The teams loved it. It was just a great experience to finish that way and bring in something a little bit different. And that made Indy this year really, really neat.
Yeah. And as Racer Magazine publisher to Racer Magazine former publisher, I'm not going to be able to top that one. I think in the game of what have you done lately, I think that you've got me on that, Greg. But that's very cool. And I also think that, when you look at the competitive landscape you sit in with this product, I think it's important for those who again might be familiar or not familiar to understand your position relative to the other offerings. We had Trans Am, which it's pretty clear positioning on what that is. We have IMSA over here. We have IndyCar. We have NASCAR. We have other offerings in the market space. What is your market position? What's the intended market position domestically and globally?
Well, and I think, Paul, I'll call you out. You actually use the word product. And you and I have been following passion far longer than product.
Yes, that's right.
And so it is, but we have to recognize that. And professionally speaking, there is a product, there is positioning, but it is in that reflection. What does today's automotive motorsport enthusiast and driver want? And where can they go? Because, hallelujah, there's a bazillion opportunities to race in America right now on any given day at any given track. So, where do you fit? How do you call out? What's the differentiation? I think the things where we look at is that in the, awesome club organizations like SCCA and NASA, we become an opportunity with our touring car class and what Jim Jordan has really worked so hard on. And now with the upcoming Toyota GR Cup, for people who are entry-level sports car racing enthusiasts, it gives them a chance to go in and do something without having to spend their kids' college education funds. And that's...
By the way, thank you for going down my question list. I was about to ask you about.
Good. I'm trying to be proactive here and not take advantage of our friendship either. It is something that I think really we love having the touring car area, and we've talked about this before. Yes, there is a ladder within SRO America, and yes, it does start with TCA, goes to TC, goes to TCX now, and then moves to GT4 and GT3, and we have GT America for the heritage of the single driver sprint format, which was so much of what we did. But at the same time, we recognize with the increased expenses of GT racing, the rest of the world was racing with a multi-driver format. So several years ago in 2016, we started considering, multiple drivers and what would that look like, and how could we do that? And by 17, we're in full effect on that. So now we give an opportunity still for entry-level sports car enthusiasts to continue with what fits very well with club racing, single driver, sprint racing format, and then move into maybe a little bit more of the professional racing category and then get into Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS. And they can experience tire changes, strategy, refueling, but they're still doing it in 90 minutes. They're not doing it in a 24-hour format. And I think that just explains them from positioning, well, where do you go? Well, obviously you go to IMSA. You get an opportunity to race in endurance and race at some iconic tracks like Daytona and look at that. And if you want to go to Le Mans someday, that is a road to get there. Fortunately, we also have a global platform with our IGTC series that allows you to race around the world in our 24 hours of Spa. It'll be 75 years of that race this summer. So coming along.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the global platform, and I want to talk about that in a minute. But I want to go back to my question list here real quickly, because TCX, excuse me, has been a real eye opener to me. What's happened there, and
TCX was a great area where we saw what was happening in the development to go TC plus. We also saw what BMW was doing with their cars, and there was so many of them sold. And where could these guys go to have a home? They had a new car out. How does this fit? And then our concern was, like, anytime you get, are we going to become a single make series of TCX? Is it can just be an all BMW class? Well, now we have Honda developing cars for it. And it really gives us that, loosely speaking, don't get me in too much trouble with Jim and the team, but if you use a basic horsepower level, you're 150 to 200 in TCA, you're in that 200 to 250 pushing on 300 in TC, and then you're in that sub 400 range when you get to TCX. But a lot of it became to the sophistication level, and in each of these you're dealing with it. And also, where can we take TCR style cars, where TCR is its own class and trademark and runs very well? What can we do to have a fit that's kind of a notch below that in both cost and yet at the same time sophistication of handling and everything else? And it's been neat. I'm pleasantly surprised. We started with, I think Jim started with almost 5 cars, and then now has built it and broke double digits, and I think it'll grow again this next season.
Yeah, I've been impressed by that, and you went your own way.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think, Paul, that's a good fit. That I think when you've heard from everyone speaking today, when you serve the customers and you always have to be a bit in front of what the customer's needs are, then everything else shakes out. If you take care of the customers, everything else shakes out.
Yeah,
And
of course.
we're a customer-focused organization.
Yeah, that's great, Greg. And let's go back to the international kind of halo above all of this. I had the privilege of hanging out with you, I think, inside a decade ago, but at the race at Laguna Seca, that was eye-opening to me, the caliber of racing, racers, and teams.
Yeah.
It's not well known in America as it should be that what this is and what it represents on the global stage.
Well, it's coming together. We've gone through 5 years now of the IGTC, and it is the idea behind it originally was, okay, let's have a international global championship, but do it in a, I don't want to say anti-WEC, because that sounds that there's nothing wrong with WEC, but without the cost related to that, which before it was popular to be green, Stefan has always been very clear about that and mindful of the damage to the environment when we're flying cars around the world, that, what that costs, and even in transport and everything. He said, what if we focused on our customer base racing and went to these iconic global tracks with the manufacturer's best representative from that country? If they want to take containers, great, that's up to them to do. But, in his vision, your best representatives from Mercedes in North America would race. And we certainly saw that at Indy this last year. I think we only had one team that came in an international container. The rest of us were right there of the manufacturers dealing with the best teams that they could have and put through. So you might have had the international drivers and support teams there, but the cars themselves and everything else came within the continents they operated on. That cuts the environmental cost and at the same time promotes the thing that each of the manufacturers is trying to do, which is sell vehicles within that and then be able to get global bragging rights. Coincidentally, I think it's interesting, Mercedes was one of the early adopters of this, and they just celebrated their 4th championship globally by, I think, approaching it very methodically that way. They aren't flying a lot of Mercedes around the world. They're working in each of the markets and working with the best teams.
You can do that in your series by the nature of how the cars are created and distributed. The nature of
and
what
like you say, you mentioned the challenge of balance of performance, but once you do have a global BOP, then it makes it much easier. You're not worried about, oh, that cheated up car from Alabama is going to be here today. No, you know that they've got to be within the global spec.
Don't pick on Alabama.
I try not to. I try not to.
But I do think that again, this I remember sitting, I think I've shared with you before, sitting at a conference in Detroit next to Stefan Rittel, where we sat together at lunch, and this is probably in the early part of the prior or midpoint of the prior 15, 16 years ago, when he was laying out this kind of vision of what he was doing. And it made a tremendous amount of sense. And the idea that you're creating a sustainable, if you will, environment for manufacturers to create exciting, interesting cars that really carried the essence of the brand, but also delivered that self-esteem. Look, I'm driving something really amazing here, where you had just a managed environment where these cars could coexist at a racetrack. Was somewhat revolutionary.
Yes. Yeah. And I think, when you look at Stefan's GT1 experience and seeing how manufacturers could dominate a class and unfortunately kill a class. And I think, as much as we all yell about BOP and even I as a series get frustrated by it as time, there's a real point to it when you realize that it comes down to the drivers. It comes down to racer and who is the best racer that day, what team executed the best way. The series gives the best possible balance of performance. And then it's up to the teams and drivers and manufacturers to bring their A game. And that's what brings out the competition. Having come from the background that I did, which was always about selling bits of kit to go faster, it really helps to see now it's all about the racers. It's all about the teams. It's all about the manufacturers bringing their A game. Your current article in Racer with the new Ferrari GT by Richard James, a great story and fun to see. We're really talking about all of that works and how you're still under a balance of performance, mandate and the GT3 platform mandate. And you know that end result is the best possible driving experience.
Yeah, the cars retain their value. There's a market beyond your series for the cars. There's a financial ecosystem that makes a little more sense because you're the custodian of the car that has value. It's interesting because it also has lineage being a factory built race car. I just had an interesting comment pop up in the chat from Tim McGrain, who we both knows at M1 Concours with Scramp and running WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. And he did mention during the 8-hour event at Laguna Seca, your talented drivers ran the race. And thank you, Tim, for reminding me of this. I remember this as well, was 0 yellow flags.
Yeah, we set an all-time lap record run because they hadn't done any endurance racing there of that length. And so we set the most laps, and it was funny. And then we went on to Indy and set an immediate record for the most amount of yellows, having 11 yellows in 8 hours. I was very thankful to only have 2 this last race around. So, they were a lot of the same very talented drivers that were part of the 11 yellows. So,
hey, but you took away from that run at Laguna. Come on.
Yeah. It was an amazing time. And I think the fun thing that we're seeing now is that I think for all of us in motorsport, I can't speak to the cool bits of kit things that we've seen and fuel and things like that, but for all of us in motorsports, it's bringing people involved in transportation and bringing the thrill of seeing all this. And that's where the joy of sports car racing is so much fun, because, as exciting as hypercar is and all that we're learning about LMDH, it's hard for people to identify and relate to the vehicles. And when they are at sports car racing, and even John was speaking about this earlier, at a Trans Am race, there's still a silhouette that they recognize and they can relate to, and say that's a Ford, that's a Chevy, that's a Ferrari, Porsche, Lamborghini, etc. And I think that is really enjoyable to people, and we need to bring that out so that more and more people. We all talk about the benefit that Drive to Survive brought to motorsports globally, but the next aspect is for all of us to engage people and bring everybody to the paddock.
Yes, and again, you have the cars people dream of driving, and it's easy to see yourself in that car on the road or on the racetrack in your mind's eye. I would say there's a barrier in most people's mind if the car is a purpose-built extreme race car. That's outside of what most people think they can do. But I think that's part of the emotional connection to sports car racing that's made it work over the years. The other part of what you do is I think the series is very well presented. The live streams that I've watched too from the international events as well. There's almost it's like you're connecting to a culture. And when I've been in your paddock, it's changed over the years. It's take this the right way. It's become more professional. I'm not saying that it was unprofessional before, but the actual execution of the environment's more professional. We still have a degree of pro-am racers in the series, but there's a total change that's occurred during the last 4 years, 5 years in this paddock, where even though it is, you're talking about behaving in a way that's relevant to the local market, it does have a feel of this spaceship having landed from another continent, and you're touching into the heart of European motorsports culture.
It's having just returned from the UK, it is so different when you're over there, and it is really exciting to know that we race in Japan, we race in China, we race in Indonesia, Australia, Africa, and each of those venues and markets are slightly different, and they change a little bit, and you have to be mindful of it. But the overarching aspect of it, that Stefan's background working with Bernie Ecclestone as he did, I think it really gave him a sense as make it as professional and luxurious as possible, enjoyable. And yet for all of us in North America, we haven't forgot our roots. We are still an open paddock. We want people to be able to come and enjoy the drivers. And we're so fortunate our teams are so engaging that way with the autograph sessions, with the chance for meet and greet and everything, and building to more of it, like with our technical partnership, where both AWS and CrowdStrike, we're dealing with where the world's really living. We're all digital these days. So by having the leading cybersecurity sponsor and then the global cloud provider for Amazon, that the dominant person that way, it lets people see, oh yeah, there's something more to this. It's a little bit more higher end. It's not F1, not by a long shot, and we don't have any aspirations to do it that way. But I think there's more of an expectation in that global marketplace that you look a little bit more like that, despite our club background, and where those are still our roots.
Well, it shows. By my last visit to your paddock, I was impressed by how you'd evolved. And
come on up to Sonoma in March, and you'll see another exciting evolution.
I think that we have a date then, Greg.
Good. Good.
I will be freeloading in your hospitality area in March at Sonoma.
We look forward to it. Again, I want to say to the Epar trade, you guys, awesome. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing for the industry, putting this together. This third event, if we look at the gravitas of the speakers, we're honored to be part of it and happy to be the midpoint, knowing that you guys are going to finish well the rest of the week. And we look forward to seeing you in Indy next week.
Thank you. We'll see you there.
It's all downhill from here, Greg.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Registering on Epar Trade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to Epar Trade.